I want to take us on to the Interstate 450 in Washington State. 5 colleagues are sharing in a van carpool ride on the way to work. One of the colleagues, a senior engineer, declares that this culture will not change in this company until somebody dies. They're going to Renton, Washington. It's the year of the Max. The Boeing 737 MAX 8. First introduced in 1967, the 737 became the Ford Taurus of the sky. Ubiquitous. Nearly every major airline has a Boeing 737. All of Southwest Airlines' 700 plus fleet, 737s. Much to the enjoyment of the Boeing investors, they were coming out with a new iteration, replacing the old sort of cigar-sized engines with new big engines, double the thrust, half the fuel consumption, too good to be true. And this statement, nobody will care about the culture in this company until somebody dies, became prophetic. Within months, the first plane, Lion Air 610, went down in the Java Sea in Indonesia. 2 minutes after takeoff, the plane literally was fighting against the pilots. A slightly misaligned sensor on the left side of the plane was giving wrong information to a very powerful software system that essentially was telling the plane wrong information. The pilots were fighting, until the lead pilot went back to an engineer that happened to be on the plane, and it was too late. The co-pilot tried to take over the controls, didn't yank it hard enough, and they went down nose first into the Java Sea in Indonesia, 189 people dead. The issue with this is that they didn't have a speak-up culture. This wasn't news. There's one retired naval officer by the name of Ed Pearson who was very outspoken. Tons of orders kept coming in, tons of orders, and they simply couldn't keep up. Boeing seemingly put profits ahead of humanity and ahead of safety. How could this happen? How could this happen when you have the largest aerospace company in the world that is responsible for millions of lives every single day? How could something this catastrophic happen? That was the first plane. After the first plane went down, Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg said publicly that it is the fault of a foreign airline and foreign pilots. Everything should have been done with training. There was no mention of this powerful software called the MCAS at all. Something was fishy. Less than 5 months later, the second plane goes down. Ethiopian Airlines 302, killing 157. A father is widowed, losing all 4 of his children, the youngest being 1 year old and losing his wife as well. How could this happen when the issue was known? When people inside of the company said, we're putting quality aside and we're moving too quick. Small project status meetings turned into large town halls like this, where there was public bullying. You said you would be caught up today. Why aren't you caught up today? Keep going. How could this happen, this disaster? Look no further than the Bible. Luke 10:29, the Good Samaritan passage. The story goes that there's a stranger on the side of a street in a ditch in obvious distress, needs help, and the high priest walks by and doesn't help. A lowly shepherd stops and helps the stranger in need. Who's the leader? The one who stops and helps. It's not the one with the title. Leaders are not born, leaders are not made, leaders are chosen based upon the way that they behave. And so who's the leader here? The one who shows up like one. And so there were some social scientists out of Princeton in 1963 who devised this brilliant experiment. They asked for theologians, people who were studying to become priests, to volunteer to go give a talk to younger students on Luke 10:29, on the Good Samaritan passage. They all volunteered. They were all well-valued, wonderful people. And as the speakers showed up in the green room en route to the speaking room, they were put into one of 3 groups: low rush, medium rush, and high rush. Low rush is, oh good, you're here, the speaking room is that way, you have 15 minutes, go get them, enjoy. Medium rush is, oh you're here, go now, if you don't go now, you're going to be late. And high rush is, where have you been? You're 15 minutes late, everyone is waiting for you. Now, there was only one way to get from the green room to the speaking room, one hallway, and in the hallway, there was an older gentleman lying down on the floor, coughing in obvious distress. And the question for all of us is, what percentage of the people stopped to help the stranger in need? Meta. Not the fake Facebook Meta, real Meta. So tell me, the low rush group, you're on time, you have all the time in the world, there's no rush. What percentage of those people stopped and helped the stranger in need? What do you think? 40%. 50? 30? There's the pessimist. There's the pessimist, 5%. It was 63%. 63% of people. And you're like, hey, that was higher than all of our guesses. That's awful. That means 37% of people didn't help someone coughing on the floor. What about medium rush? You're running right on time. Do you have time to stop and help? What do you think, higher or lower? 45% in the medium rush, where you're just on time. And the high rush group, you're already late. Where have you been? You can feel your heart pounding as you're late to go to the speaking room. What do you think? 10%. And in some instances, across all three categories, some of the theologians who were studying to become priests stepped over the stranger in need on the floor, coughing in distress. This is the impact of pressure, time, financial, investor, keep going, go, 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 can have on our values, on our ethics, and our behavior. When we push, we can get this. I guarantee you these numbers would have been even higher. They say, okay, you've signed up to go give a talk on the Good Samaritan. Do you know what that means, by the way? It means that even if it's at your personal cost or running a little bit late, you help someone who's in need. I guarantee you those numbers would have gone up. What we need in our cultures, when the going gets tough, when our integrity gets pushed, when we're thinking about sacrificing profits, time, quality, whatever it might be, is leadership. But the question is what does it mean to lead? Because we walk around talking about leadership, we throw that word out there, but what does it actually mean? Well, I think we need to define what leadership means. I think we need to select better leaders, and I think we need to support leaders better. A definition of leadership, I'll take from my colleague Simon Sinek, that leaders aren't the ones who are in charge, leaders are the ones who take care of those in their charge. As I said before, leaders are not born, leaders are not made, leaders are chosen based upon the way that they behave. The only thing you need to be a leader, you guessed it, followers, that's it. People who willingly go in the direction that you're going, not for you, but for themselves, because of trust. They believe in where you're leading them. So we need to agree upon a definition of leadership within your organization. Then we need to select across that definition. If we only select people based on performance, we may get high performance for a time, just like you can run a snowmobile in sand for a little bit until it burns out. We need to select leaders who care just as much, if not more, about trust and human relationship than they do about performance, because that's the input to get us the output of performance. And then finally, we need to support leaders better. Harvard Business Review proved that there's a 12-year gap between when we get our first management role and when we get our first formal management training. Age of 30 is when we usually get our first management job. Age 42 when we get our first formal management training. That's like giving a parent nothing whatsoever once they have the kid. Good luck with that, right? We need to actually support people who we put into these roles. We need to let them know what they're signing up for, and supporting them doesn't mean multiple $100,000 leadership development programs. It can be a good book at the right time and a book club. Boom, you have a leadership development program. You have to work and build the muscle of putting purpose, of putting people ahead of profits. That's how we can avoid missed opportunities, failures, and even devastation like the 737 MAX 8. If we want to create cultures where people do speak up and it's encouraged and it keeps going, where we create organizations where Ed Pearson, the senior manager and retired naval officer who literally spoke up to the general manager of the Renton facility in Boeing and said, I've shut down military operations for less than this. And the response was, this isn't the military, this is a for-profit company. How do we create an organization where you're hearing from the voice of your people, When we create organizations where we hear from the voice of our people, we gain from their ideas, we gain from their concerns, and we even gain from their disagreements, right? When you hear the things that you don't want to hear, but you're glad you heard them. As Admiral Bill McRaven says, bad news never gets better with time. We want to hear it sooner rather than later so we can do something about it. If we do wish to create these type of speak-up cultures, I've learned that there are two pieces that work as a cycle: encourage and reward. And it works like a cycle and it works like a ripple. Encourage means that it feels like it's worth the reputational risk to raise our hand, to stick our neck out, worth the risk to our reputations, our relationships, our jobs, to say, I have an idea, I have a concern, I disagree. It's like going into a boxing ring, I've heard. I've spoken up many times in my career, and every time I do it, it isn't without fear. There's always fear. And you open up the strings of that wrestling ring and you roll in and your heart's beating and the lights are on you. Do you do it? Do you do it? But you feel that it's worth it. You feel that it's worth the risk. And then when you do, is it rewarded? Reward doesn't mean there, you're right, we'll implement all of your ideas. Reward means thank you, or tell me more, or I'm not sure I agree, but I like where you're going. Reward doesn't mean you're right. Reward means that you matter and that you're made to feel that you matter. And now here's the best part, it ripples. If I have something to share with a senior leader and I'm not sure if I do it, but then I do it and it goes well, I report back to my friends, my peers, my colleagues, my direct reports. This is rewarded here, do it. As soon as you speak up inside of an organization and it's repeatedly ignored or worst, punished, good luck. One of my favorite quotes from Andy Stanley is that leaders who do not listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And that silence, especially on Zoom where everyone's just nodding heads on mute, that doesn't mean agreement. That doesn't mean consensus. That probably means you haven't created a condition to listen, to pause, to create smaller group conversations. As they say in the military, spears. Poke spears in it. What's wrong with my argument, right? And if you're not getting anything qualitative back, go to quantitative. On a scale of 0 to 10, how clear are these ideas? And if you all say 10, you're lying. That's how we do it. Finally, with leadership is it's personal. For every single one of us, transformation is an inside-out job. Leadership is an inside-out job. We have to care, you have to care. For me, I grew up with a stutter, and I still work to overcome it. I know what it feels like to be voiceless. I know what it feels like to lack confidence. I've also been inside of teams and organizations, been a part of relationships where I felt that it is encouraged to speak up, and then when I do, it is actually rewarded, and it's marvelous. Politics are low, honesty flourishes, the organization works wonderfully. I've also been part of teams and organizations where you do not speak up, because as soon as you do, you're punished, and good luck with that. So my question to you is, what do you care about? What's personal to you? Because regardless of what industry you are in, leadership is a life or death business. We know from Gallup and we know from the National Institute of Health that our relationship with our boss has more of an impact on our health than that of our relationship with our family doctor. Truth. And we know it. And so know that we have this power, you have this power to either feed people's lives or deplete people's lives. And if we feed people's lives, it's just good for business. Thank you.